What is up, my ninjas? I'm Strydent, and welcome to another video, actually. It's been a while since I've done something like this, so bear with me if, I'm kind of windy, twisty, turny with my points. Um, a lot of stuff I want to talk about, but I want to start off with a positive, because this is kind of I have a question, and with me, it's usually the way that it is, the way it exists, tends to hit me in a negative way, but there may be a positive light to it. But this first piece that I want to get through is a shout out to my music lovers out there. A while back, I was feeling a little bit nostalgic, and I love the music that Nobuo Uematsu did for the Final Fantasy series. I'm talking all the way back to Final Fantasy 3 or 6, depending on your perspective or how you met the games. And whenever I listen to those, there's a very nostalgic feeling. It's probably the most nostalgic I get for stuff because they're good games. I'm not a huge RPG person for the mechanics. I'm always an RPG person for the story. So I kind of fight my reactions so that I can get the story, you know? Um, Final Fantasy VIII was my favorite, whereas Final Fantasy VII was everybody's favorite because of the stoic blonde pretty boy with his fucking giant, Berserk sword. Because many of you hadn't read Berserk before you played Final Fantasy VII. I had older friends and they introduced me to Berserk for better or for worse. And I always loved Tifa. Tifa was my favorite. Tifa, when I was into waifus and shit, Tifa was the best girl. Period. There was no comparison. Um, with Lulu and Quistis coming in, a good second. Renoa was dope, but she was dope for Squall. So anyway, um, the music of Eight always hit me, especially after you beat the game. If you beat the game and get the full-on ending, do all the things, you beat Ultimecia, then you fight the legendary beast and all that shit. Like, the ending felt so good back when games had endings. And anyway, I was listening to Eyes on Me. Well, I was listening to the whole ending theme that includes Eyes on Me. And in the comments of this particular post, it was nothing but like innocent. I shouldn't say innocent, but because there were jaded people in there, but the perspective and appreciation of the music was so good that it just made me so like you have hope for humanity. It made me feel like not the jaded bastard I am. Um, Listening to people reminisce on how they met their significant others, them the feeling. Some people had negative experiences, but the music was the positive. They met a girl, something happened, they drifted apart, and the song reminds them of the good feelings they had in the beginning when they met that girl, when there was hope for that particular situation to turn into, something that could have been the rest of their life. There was a couple that posted about their experience and how initially they met. He introduced her to the game. He beat the game with her, and then she was, I think one was Japanese, one was Chinese, and they were explaining that the singer was Chinese, but the game comes from Japan, and I think the girl was the Chinese one, and she was surprised that the Japanese game would even bother with the Chinese singer, and he was explaining, it's music. It kind of transcends cultures because a lot of people listen to music that they don't understand the words, but they understand the feeling. This is this kind of thing with my family. I'm of an immigrant family, and with us being raised the way we were, that's a sentiment I can 100% get behind, which is why I don't subscribe to Black America's generic kind of perspective. All white people bad. I'm like, but all white people aren't responsible for that. America was literally settled. Spaniards came over here and fucked everything up. I mean, they fucked things up for the with the blessing of the queen, but they came over here and fucked everything up. And you don't say anything about the Spaniards. You just say white people. You know what I mean? Like it's like the history. You don't understand the history, and then also you're still holding everyday random people that were born within the same time period you might have been born in. You're holding them responsible for shit they probably, most people don't even know how it went down. They don't know that the history. They should, but they don't. You know, let's just be real. And so, like for me, it's easy to just be like to see the separation. It's two different. It's two completely different sets of people, multiple different um, decades or centuries between when they did whatever they did and where we are now. Now, you see lots of good people of all colors fighting on behalf of races that they don't belong to. You can't put that there, you know? Or like when you hear people complain about the fact that a singer or a musician sings in the style of someone else. Like when people discovered that a lot of the soul hits that we love, or like the pop hits from like the 80s and early 90s and stuff like that, and even some R&B were sang by white Brits, and they were like, it's cultural appropriation. I'm like, it's music. It's music. It's not appropriation. They didn't pretend to be black. They didn't pretend to be Hispanic or Jamaican or whatever the case may be. They just enjoyed the music, the style of the music, and it inspired them to sing like their favorite singer, who happened to be whatever that is. And so we got a hit from it because the music resonated with the people, regardless of the vessel that produced the music. Now we know there's another side to this. There's the dark side to everything, but we're not talking about the dark side. We're talking about just the general idea is that the music transcends the race. Like there's DJs that mix Bollywood tracks, and they add a little bit more beat, a little bit more rhythm to it, or they slow it down or something like that. There's a dope ass album from Dan the Automator called Bombay the Hard Way. He did two of them. At least as far as I know, he did two of them. I have both of them. I listen to them all the time. There's people I know who have heard this album that don't listen to Hindi music, and they heard these tracks, and they're like, "Yo, turn that shit up. I want to hear more." And I gladly did, because I'm always down to share and learn about new music or get into new music. Um, but anyway, just the like it was weird because I'm used to the internet being kind of a negative place where people are their worst selves to a lot of people. Even in this hobby, people throw around the term community so loosely and don't understand that this is not a community. This is just a bunch of people with similar hobbies, similar interests, all in a free for all where they're only focused on themselves. Um, but when I was in this comment section, there was like an outpouring of understanding, of empathy, and then general love for the music and the feelings the music creates, or brings to the surface, which, as an artist, that's the dream. You create something that you don't have to preface to people what they need to feel or what they need to think. They just experience it, and millions of people across the world, or hundreds of people, if that's as many, that see your work, whoever sees it, they all feel the exact same things. Everyone had the exact same thing to say. Either the older people were like, yo, this was one of my first games, so this ending hit me hard. And then they talked about other games that Mr. Uematsu's music was in, that the music hit them hard and it stuck with them for the rest of their lives. Or they said there was just something special about the music and the story working together to get the point across so hard that you just never forgot about it. What can you say? You know what I mean? What can you say? But shout out to you guys, you music lovers out there. You guys are great. You guys kind of give me a little bit of hope in humanity, because you guys aren't afraid to freely share emotional experiences on this blackened, evil ass, dark place that we call the internet, It was dope. It was like playing Elden Ring or fucking Bloodborne, and you get to a spot on the top of a building where there's a little bit of sunlight shining through a dark, murky ass sky. You know what I mean? With demons flying around and shit. And you have a moment of respite. You know, that's what it felt like. Because I when I go online, a lot of times I dread it because I'm like, what fucked up shit is someone gonna put in your face? Because you know, like if you say you don't like something, then some asshole has to send it to you, or they gotta put it in your way, in your face. Even friends I've known for a long time, when we're online, they have a different energy, and the shit gets on my nerves, man. And sometimes I'm like, you know me, you know I have an issue with a thing, either from a real life experience or whatever, and you think it's funny as fuck to just like force that on me, even though I told you I wasn't interested in that. I don't want to see it, or it affects me in a negative way. It sucks. It sucks. But you know, for that moment, and usually when I go on the music side of things, there's some people that just get a little too, they're generic in what they say. They always say the same shit. This song saved my life. No, it didn't. You just chose to listen to music instead of acting on a bad impulse. You showed restraint and you made a good choice. You need to do that more often. Um, but you know, you'll hear people say this the most underrated thing ever. Well, anything and everything would be the most underrated thing ever if we're talking about mainstream appeal, because not everything appeals to everybody. So, you know, it can't be mainstream. You know what I mean? And it can't be, you know, everybody's cup of tea because it's a genre, and genres appeal to specific demographics. You know, that's why we have them. But, you know, like whenever I listen to like epic music and stuff like that, I always see in the comments some of the dopest poetry, some of the dope. It's like that's where the artists hang out, like the real artists, not the ones trying to get clicks, not the ones trying to get views and all that shit and clout, but the ones who just want to create. They can't help but create, and they put it in a place where they know other artists will appreciate or add some type of value to what they do by giving them constructive criticism that helps improve what they do. So anyway, shout out to all the artists listening to music, all the emotionally intelligent, emotionally sound people who can rock with amazingly done music that we just don't seem to get as much anymore. Versatile styles, you know what I mean? Like, dude can jump from any genre, and he just gives you such good vibes from the music where you just don't feel like he phoned it in almost ever. I listen to Lost Odyssey, that track. What is it called? It's the map song. It's called The Legendary Journey, I think is what it's called. I fucking love that song. It's got this like Peruvian flute, Peruvian like ocarina sounding thing going on. It's fucking dope, and then it just busts into this full on Jimi Hendrix guitar solo, and it's like, what the fuck? Who would have put these things together? Uematsu, man, the guy is like beyond genius. So anyway, props to you. Shout out to Mr. Uematsu, and shout out to all the appreciators of his work. So now on to what the video is about. So I've been on YouTube for 14 years. I've steadily been at about, well, I started out really low. My viewer count, my sub count stayed really low. I never did this for the views and the subs, but it always felt good to know that if you put in a lot of work, people would actually see it, and they would give you, you know, some attention for what you're doing. And then you could have a conversation, because I only ever started my channel to add a objective voice in the sea of dick riders, you know, and in the sea of people who are just completely reactive. You know, they don't like a thing because it might be different from what they're used to, so they completely condemn the thing. I never liked that. It always bugged me. So my point was to make videos that explore things objectively, and then give my true opinion on those subjects or those things, and allow people to see that, you know, what you're used to hearing is a knee-jerk reaction without any thought, no research, little understanding, like a topical understanding of whatever it is that's being discussed. And there are people out here who know more about how these things work, quote unquote, like I always say, how the sausage is made. And we can objectively critique something that might be different from the norm without taking away the merits, that it may have earned from what it does differently and does well. Different doesn't always mean bad. You see a lot of people who they rest on the concept of everybody feels like this, everybody does this, everybody loves this, and so by playing that game, you kind of lessen room for thinkers that don't necessarily align with you. But here's my question and my quandary today. I used to watch a lot of reviewers. I don't watch as many reviewers anymore. I got tired of the very thing I'm talking about. No matter how many videos I've made close to 1,000 videos. I may have made over 1,000 videos. I don't count them. Matter of fact, I rarely even look at my fucking page. I just upload and then I do something else, and then I come back and I upload and I do something else. I don't even know what my metrics say. I don't really care. Every now and then I come back and I check to see if anybody new has found my page, because maybe they'll be up for a conversation about stuff. Because believe it or not, in my world, there's only a handful of people that I talk to about action figures. And when I'm online, there's so many of you, I figured, the conversation could go on forever. So if you're really about action figures, and I don't mean just I buy action figures and you want to brag that you bought action figures. I mean, you buy them, you look at what they can and can't do, you understand what they can and can't do, and you love the artistry of the figures. And you can talk about more than just the figures who have come out in the last, 2 or 3 years. If you can go back in history, if you come to it from that perspective, get at me in the comments, because I'd love to chat with you. Because I'm telling you, the majority of you guys out there, you just buy figures. You don't really have an appreciation for it from the same perspective I have. And this is what leads me to the quandary. With all the people making content, it's just that, it's content. A lot of it is soulless. A lot of it is it's extremely random. But I see their viewer counts and their sub counts are so high. I used to say when I was making G.I. Joe content that if you looked at all the Joe-specific creators, they all seem to max out at around 10 or 15,000 subscribers. And then, for the ones that collected a whole bunch of things, as long as they were 6-inch or 4-inch or 6-inch, that kind of stuff, and you weren't nostalgic based, you would cap out at 10 to 15,000 subs. But I've noticed in recent years, there's people who collect a little of everything, but they focus on Hot Toys, and they always have 20,000, 60,000, and I'm like, why? Or the guys who collect wrestling stuff and then collect Marvel Legends tend to have, there's exceptions, but they typically tend to have the higher sub counts. But then when I go in and I try to give them a chance, I'm like, let me listen to what they have to say, and nothing, absolutely nothing that comes out of their mouth is worth the sub count. It doesn't add up. It feels like they paid for subs, or maybe I'm just the screen has been pulled from over my eyes, so I just can't sub to anybody. So it just doesn't work for me. I listen to one guy every now and then. He'll post something where the topic makes me say, I've been there. And then I listen to his conversation. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? One, he was talking about, he told a chick that he collects action figures. So I'm thinking it was like he told his wife or his girlfriend that he collects action figures, and there was some conversation to be had. No, it was some random chick he told somewhere that he collects action figures, and he made it sound goofy so he could get a rise out of the chick. But then when he showed her pictures, because he collects mostly 1/6 scale figures, they were like, damn, those don't look like toys. They're dolls, if you're being real. Well, let's be real. It's a doll. It's an adult collectible doll. I used to make them. That's what it is. But somehow the way he told the story, he made it sound like he was being judged and he was able to change their perspective by fucking with them and then revealing that he collects more realistic looking figures, you know, collectibles, if you will. And I was like, okay, this is not really what what you set up and what you knocked down were two different things. I don't think you knocked anything down. And I see a bunch of so many views, and I'm just like, did everybody fall for what I fell for, or do people resonate with this? Another guy I saw, he posted a video about he finally came around to McFarlane Toys, but it was him being sarcastic. And he even calls the audience morons in the process of the video. Like, he calls the audience. You know, sometimes I will say, you guys, and then I specify the usual suspects are fucking idiots. I've been saying this for a long time. The usual suspects, the ones who they kind of set the narrative without putting the time in to really study up on what they're talking about. They only know a little bit and then they repeat it. And anyone who knows comics or knows the characters that we're talking about in figure form, we immediately are like, yeah, you don't know shit about this particular thing. You know, like back when the Fwoosh used to shit on Revel Techs, and then all of a sudden when they started making Marvel and DC characters, now Revel Techs are good. You know what I mean? You remember that? And I was one of the few people who was like, you just have no fucking clue what a Revel Tech does. You're saying it's too hard to play with. It's kind of like a puzzle in a sense. You spend some time, you figure out where the joints are and how they work, and then the fun is contorting them into a dynamic pose, and you leave them like that for a while. They're not the ones you play with. Your McFarlane, your DCUC, sometimes even your figure arts. They move so freely and nicely that they're the ones you sit and you fuck with all the time. And they can actually take that kind of abuse. Whereas like Revel Techs, like I just got the Batman, the Arkham Knight Batman. And mine out the box there were things that needed help. I got a dud. His fucking arm fell off at the, like the socket wasn't catching. Nothing was broken per se, but like I've had figures before where when you pop the arm into the socket, it doesn't catch. And then the arm just keeps falling off. This one, it felt like it caught, but then you turn it and it just fell off. So I'm looking at the peg and I'm trying to see, did I break the peg? Did I do something I wasn't supposed to? No. The lip on the peg was super thin. It's supposed to be a lot thicker because that's what catches the little ledge on the interior of the bicep swivel socket. And it just was done wrong. It was a QC issue. Then he didn't come with the second face where he's like baring his teeth and gritting, you know? And in his leg, when you bend it one or two times, it just pops right off out of the socket. Same deal. This time when you look at the peg, the lip was slanted, kind of like a screw. So normally screws, the teeth on the screw are slanted slightly to allow for it to dig deeper and pull the whole screw down as you twist it. Your socket joints or your standard swivel joints are supposed to be straight, and your lip is supposed to be fairly big, with maybe like 2-3 millimeters bigger than what the actual peg is, so that once you get it into the hole it's supposed to be in, it will catch on the ledge, and then when you turn it, because everything is flush with each other, nothing pushes it out of the hole, out of the socket. Not this one. It was slanted, pushed it out of the socket. So I was like, I call Big Bad Toy Store. I'm sending it back. We're all good. My problem is just that I would normally, and I took pictures too, and I'll put them in here so you can see what I did. It was literally like 15 minutes. I opened it, I posed it up, then I looked at things, and then I had to put it back in the box and call, and email Big Bad Toy Store. You pose them and you leave them that way. My Gurren Lagann, the flight mode Gurren Lagann from, I think, the first season, he's been on the shelf. I've posed him a handful of different times because he looks so good in those poses that I don't need to move him a bunch. But I damn sure can't really play with him. Now my super imaginative Chogokin, Great Mazinger, I can play with that thing, but there's aspects about him that he's more aligned with posing. My Infinity, my Mazinger Z Infinity model kit, I can kind of play with that thing. It's kind of tough. I didn't think it was gonna be, but he fell a couple times and nothing even bent. So for me, playing with them is, I come up with a scenario and I play it out. I don't actually bang them together like when we were kids. I'll choreograph the punches and they go sliding back into your Lego buildings or your cardboard buildings or whatever, and I just call it a day when I'm done. But I can do that because there's nothing. I don't have to think about how to move the joints. A thigh joint moves like a thigh joint. A the shoulder joint moves like a shoulder, and everything else. So you don't really have to think about it. So if you go back and you look at those old, there were other people than the Fwoosh. They're just the most popular channel that seemed to not get it until it applied to their favorite things. But you see these guys have millions, or I say millions, I'm exaggerating. They have high thousands when it comes to their subscriber count. Is it that you guys like, because I'm seeing this, you guys seem to like to be a part of a group, whether or not that group is on point. And it bugs me because there are a lot of groups out there, and a lot of these groups are not on point. There are a lot of groups out here, and a lot of these groups are detrimental to the long-term, thriving of our favorite hobby. If you got these dudes out here, fucking no impulse control, greedy as hell, bragging about taking toys out of the hands of kids. I mean, I remember during the pandemic, I talked about this in Off Our Brain. There was a guy bragging about snatching toys away from kids. I'm like, you're a grown fucking man. He was in his 50s. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You snatching toys from kids in Target? Part of why we do what we do is we're getting in touch. We're staying in touch with our child, our inner child. We were children when these things popped up. And, we loved it back then, and we continued to love it as we get older. Now you're going to turn around and give a kid that kind of experience when this shit is technically made for them. Like, I noticed even from the manufacturer and creator side of action figures, now that I'm part of that, people don't seem at all interested in creating the new nostalgia. They're all concerned and obsessed with making the old new again for them. Kids don't give a shit about G.I. Joe. Kids don't give a shit about Transformers the way that we did. They like the Bayformers because that's what was created in their lifetime. And you got to admit that love or hate the stories, and I hate the fucking movies. I hate them, with the exception of Bumblebee and maybe, I didn't really like Rise of the Beasts. I liked moments, but I didn't really like the movie. But Bumblebee stands out, and I love the War for Cybertron 2 games, War and Fall of Cybertron. But everything else is garbage except for the 86 movie. And that's saying a lot considering how much Transformers media is out there. So much of it is just not good. But the kids of today don't really care about it the way we did. Even the media that was created in recent years, it's still a small group that likes it like that, that's going to stick with it until they're 40 or 50, or even older. And an even smaller group is going to go on to make the new Transformers for, they're going to keep it alive potentially and go on to make the new generation of Transformers that new fans will discover in the year, the years to come. And I noticed that when you listen to what they're talking about, it's always nostalgia bait. It's always nostalgia focused. And I'm like, you guys tune in for this shit and you don't get tired of the same conversation all the time. I remember, I love G.I. Joeberg, but I remember being annoyed at the fact that we can't really talk about modern stuff because they want to sit there and say, Steve specifically wants to sit there and, glaze the old stuff. Dude, we had our whole childhood to glaze the old stuff. we're grown men now, and they've done better stuff, and we can't compare what was done in the past to what's done now. We have to just stick with the fact that, you know, you want to say that the old shit is superior. Like, what kind of conversation are we actually having? You know, I remember I used to go up against the G1ers. G1, G1. You know, everything's got to be G1. And I'm like, why? We had G1, and then we had the resurgence when the classics came out. And then we've had masterpieces of the G1 characters, but then we've had new versions of those same characters with updated vehicle modes and updated bot modes and updated articulation, almost like in the vein of Pursuit of Cobra for G.I. Joe, but on steroids. And somehow you just want to pretend like that shit didn't happen. You want to focus only on the cornball ass, dry ass G1 stuff. And don't get me wrong, there are aspects of G1 that I love because that's what got me into Transformers. But when you look at the G1 masterpiece figures, but then you compare them to something that like Flame Toys does, what are we talking about here? Objectively, one thing looks dated as fuck and the other thing looks like the fucking future. And if you can't see that, why are you in this hobby? Why are you even having conversations with people? I listened to another reviewer, content creator. He wasn't really reviewing. People don't seem to really review things, I've noticed. They really just create content that surrounds a particular toy. And essentially, every point was, I like that it does this. I like that it does that. I like that it does this. No objectivity, just that you like these things about the figure. There was no negatives. There were no areas where you were like, this part is not as fun as it's not as easy to manipulate as it should be, considering it is a toy and play is the goal. Just I like. There's another guy who he repaints and swaps parts on all of his DC related shit. And then he will nitpick colors. And I'm like, but like, do you like the figure itself? The thing you opened up. Do you actually like that? Do you actually enjoy playing with that? Because all I ever hear is you can make it better. And sometimes, I'll say most of the time, I don't think what he does to him, it's better, but it's his. So he has to be happy with it. But you're putting it out there for the rest of us to see. And I see in the comments nothing but glazing. No objective, like, you know, I remember talking to someone about how Cyclops' costume in the comics, it was intended to be black and yellow because that's the X-Men's, when you look at the New Mutants and shit, that was the training gear. It was black and yellow. What they started to do is, because the walls of the Danger Room are like a silver, but they would color in the comics, they would color it blue. He'd be training in the Danger Room and blue would be reflecting on his suit, so it'd be black with blue highlights. It started to look so good that it just became the way that they did stuff. Larson used to do it with Spider-Man. You know, he has black and red. That's his costume colors. But the black part is shiny. The sky is blue. You have blue light on his blue shine on his black tights, you know, the black parts of his tights. And then there are artists, different colorists and different artists who color those parts differently. But canonically, it's supposed to be this. I brought this up and I got all kinds of arguing as if I'm some pleb who hasn't had to work for these companies and listen to the editorial people actually tell us, you know, art directors and project managers tell us these are the colors. You have freedom to do things you want to do with the look or not. Sometimes we didn't have freedom. If you look in the like how to draw comics the Marvel way, they outline a lot of this stuff. Some of what I'm talking about is more of a 90s convention. It's not so much a 80s thing and a 70s thing. Like Spider-Man started out with a black suit, a black and red suit, because it was easy, you know. Color-wise, black is not like, you're not real. I don't think you even pay extra for black because it's not technically one of the colors that's offered. The colors are everything outside of black and white in the old days of printing. So they would do that often as a way to get around the paying for more, more colors. I brought these things up and I got all kinds of arguing. You don't know comics and blah, blah, blah. Because, everybody's a 60-second expert. And I'm like, dude, I'm citing my sources. You guys you lead with how you feel, but you don't cite your sources. And people dick ride what you say. And then you attack other people who know better. Like, I know better. I'm telling you facts. But I look at the channels that they follow and their sub rates are so fucking high. I remember when Agent O was still creating videos. He would review the new stuff he was buying at the time, and sometimes he would be the first one to put it up on YouTube for whatever the particular character may be. And somehow, with him doing a more, and I'm not saying this because he's my friend, I'm saying this because objectively, he was doing something that others were not doing. His pictures were just about as good as some of the other people. I mean, not always. When he first started out, he needed a little bit more time getting more relaxed and working on making sure your colors are right and that the lighting is right so that the figure pops. And when I say pop, I'm not saying this just to sound like I know what I'm talking about. I mean, it needs to stand out against the background. His old videos, like the first couple, were not very well lit, and he said it in those videos that he's still getting lights and stuff to get things together. And then when he got all of that, the lighting made the figure stand out against the background. You hear the term make it pop. Make it clap. You hear that term a lot, and people use it to sound like they know what they're talking about. Oh, they need to break up the colors. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? All costumes have a primary, a secondary, a tertiary color, and an accent. You look at a Gundam, for instance, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's mostly like a gray color. Then you've got red, blue, and yellow somewhere in there. And sometimes you'll have a metallic color as an accent. Go look at what I'm talking about. Every single uniform ever created, they follow those rules. But you'll hear people go, oh, you need to break up the colors so that it can pop. Shut up. Like, stop. You know? Or like you'll watch a video where they're supposed to be reviewing the figure, and what they do is they describe all the colors. Are you doing this for blind viewers? Because more than likely people have the figure in hand, or they can literally see what you're looking at. We don't need you to tell us what color everything is. But so much time will be spent on those things. And when you look at the sub counts, they've got so many subscribers. And I'm just like, wow. So people say they don't like being spoken to, spoken down to like their children. But you'll listen to someone hold a Spider-Man figure in front of the screen and then tell you that he's predominantly two colors. And then you'll subscribe. Like, yeah, more. Really? Or, it's Batman. He's predominantly two colors. And then they'll have the nerve to say, oh, it's the wrong gray. Or I don't like this gray. And I prefer this gray. You don't make superheroes and you don't make toys. You also bought the figure. You saw the gray in the ads for it. Then you saw it in person, and then you plopped down money for it. We don't need to hear that part because it's past that. You bought it. It's like the logic left the building with a lot of these videos, but then the audience perpetuates the lack of logic, the lack of understanding, the lack of research, the lack of what's the word? Buy-in for these characters, the worlds they inhabit, and everything else, that it makes me feel like the majority of the people who subscribe to these things don't actually know anything about this stuff. I could be wrong, and that's why I'm asking this. Why do you guys subscribe to so many people who don't really offer anything? And then what is it that you think that a good reviewer needs to offer? Because I've watched many people. This doesn't even have anything to do with me. because I'm not in it for those reasons. I'm still not monetized. YouTube's given me so much bullshit about being monetized. That was why I started my Patreon at one point, just to see if what I wasn't going to be able to get from YouTube, would I get on Patreon? And that was a horrible mistake. I was so shit. You want to talk about adding to depression? My fucking Patreon was pitiful. So eventually I just left it up so I could communicate with a couple guys. And after a while, I was like, you know what? Let me take this down and find another way, because I don't like that there are people paying to communicate with me when we just chat about the same shit that we would chat about on social media anywhere else. So let me come up with another way. I created a Discord, and it's kind of, you know, it was popping for a little while, and I had a very small group. But whenever I talk about something other than what I bought, as in like, let's discuss why this particular phenomenon happens, or let's discuss how we better communicate this particular idea, or what do you guys feel about, you know, the disrespect for the audience when it comes to the way that things are presented to us these days. You know, because at a point in time, superhero stuff was considered nerd like territory, and no one else would be interested. And then now it's $1 billion enterprise, and now they treat it like the you even hear people say, I don't want it to be just like the comics. Well, excuse me, motherfucker, then why are you watching? Why did they buy the IP if it's not going to be, I mean, I know it wouldn't be exactly like the comics, because many of those comics were written many years ago, but like, if you're not going to put the things that are in the comic in the movie, why make the movie of that character? You know, kind sir, explain to me what the purpose is. So you're going to have name recognition, but you're not going to have anything else from that, you know, whatever. We've been through the early 2000s. That's the way they used to do this shit. And how many of those franchises are still around now with the same people at the helm pulling in money? Most of them, the first movie made a decent amount, and then every subsequent movie that they got the opportunity to make made less, because they cared less and less and less, to the point where you heard directors telling their actors, do not read the source material. Why the disrespect? Then right next to those movies, you have Lord of the Rings, where Peter Jackson and his whole team was like, yo, immerse yourself in the source material. And many say it's the greatest adaptation from book to screen that we've ever gotten. I would agree with them, especially if you have the extended editions. Shit. That stuff is like, it's legendary. It's legendary. But yet with comics, we can't get that. That's how we've been trained. And I talk about this stuff. Crickets, nothing. So I'm just like, man, I guess that's just how it is. You know? That's why I said in the beginning, if you're about that kind of stuff, hit me up and then we'll talk. I'll give you the link to my Discord. We'll chat. Because I don't want to open it up to everybody, because then it becomes a shit show real quick. All the things I don't like about the internet become commonplace on your personal Discord. I'm not about that life. I want to talk to people who have something to actually offer, not people who just are chronically online, because there's a difference. It's like when, you know, people heard that some of us were making figures. They just assumed because they knew people that make figures that makes them qualified to now do the same thing. And it's like, okay, we need particular things, particular skill sets to make the figures a reality. What do you do? Oh, I just know so-and-so and I like figures. I mean, I'm sorry. That will help on the back end or the front end, I guess, when the figure's made and you review it and you sing its praises if it's good, and you tell people what you like about it, and you keep on hyping it up. That's what we need. But like when it comes to making the figure, that doesn't really help us, because we need specific things, specific skill sets, specific specialties and needs met in order to make the thing a reality. People will call you a dick for saying that, you don't have a place for them, but it's like, I mean, you want me to lie? So you want me to be like, oh, my friend, I'm going to hire my friend who's unqualified to do a job because he's my friend? No, I got to be real with you, because there's money involved and there's people involved, and you know, companies and contracts and shit like that. So we can't do it like that. So, you know, again, I'm asking, when you go on these sites and you go, or these pages, these websites, these creators, whatever, what is it that you are actually looking for? You know, I try my best to talk to you the way we would talk if you were right here. If you said something fucking crazy, I'd be like, yo, that's fucking crazy and that makes no sense. And we could laugh about it or whatever, and we could go on about our business. But you would know that I'm not going to like sugarcoat how I feel about what was said or what was done. I'm going to be like, what the fuck were you thinking? What do you mean by blah, 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 you know? And you can ask anybody that knows me. I have responded to them like that, and we continue to be good friends years and years and years later. They could say later on, like, damn, that was harsh. And I'll apologize if I was too harsh, but I'll also explain why my response was as such. You know, I am a very direct person, very direct. Business associates know this, co-workers know this, family knows this, and my friends, long time, and viewers that have been watching me, they know this. And one of the benefits of this is that when you come across absolute stupidity, it doesn't stand a chance because they can't misconstrue what I'm saying. I don't mix words, or mince words, as they say. I don't give you the soft version because I don't think you can handle the straight up version. If you can't handle it, then peace. You don't have to listen. Peace. Go about your business. Peace be with you. I am not trying to attack you. I just want to let you know that all that bullshit that you find in other places, you won't find here. You know, you won't find me telling you that a ninja having a strange weapon is not logical. Especially when we're talking about like G.I. Joe and stuff, and you know how obsessed with ninjas Larry Hama was, which means that if he put it in the comic, in many cases, it was based on an actual ninja weapon, and ninjas have been killing people for many years. Not necessarily the ninja, the visual that we see today, and that we have seen over the last, several decades, but I'm talking about like stealth operative, feudal stealth operatives, for lack of a better term, spies and stuff, and people that belong to clans that study stealth arts and such. They've used those weapons and they've been killing people with them for many years. So some American guy comes up and says, yeah, this doesn't look very practical. Motherfucker, like, nobody asked you. How does it look with the ninja that you just bought? Because you bought the toy, so it means you like what you saw. How does it work with the toy you got? Nobody cares if you think it's practical because you don't do anything. You play with toys. I'm being real, Not all of us practice martial arts for most of our lives, It bugs me when I listen to people who aren't fighters, when I listen to people who haven't served, when I listen to people who've never worked a law enforcement gig, or have never been shot at, or never been slapped in their face, spit at, or any of that kind of stuff. You never seen combat in any way, shape, or form. Sit down in front of thousands of people and tell us your opinion of what you think combat is like. That shit cracks me up. It's like, stick to what you know. You know action figures. And in many cases, you barely know the action figures, from what I'm seeing. And yet, in the background, there's hundreds of action figures. You should know this because it's your hobby. It's what you love. I feel like the reason why I get so passionate about this is it makes us all look bad. When people make fun of us, those are the examples they use. When people say, oh, you're in your 40s and you collect action figures, they are thinking of these guys that just flaunt the toy in front of the screen and barely know anything about what it is, what it does, where it comes from. I'm not talking about the folks that can't differentiate reality from their favorite anime, like the My Hero Academia fan base. Ooh, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the reviewers who collect the thing and have been collecting a thing for a long time. There was a lot of this in the G.I. Joe community. There's a lot of it in the Star Wars community, quote unquote. There's a lot of it in the Marvel community. You sitting here advocating for a costume that you've never seen in print in modern days. You weren't even born when the character wore that costume. And you're like, I want that. Make that. Hasbro, make that over the modern shit. The more modern shit, like from the 90s, the 2000s, when you were actually reading comics. And Hasbro, of course, listens because there's like no detail on it. So they always push that out first. So many of us who've been reading comics for 30 years or so, we're like, why the fuck did you make that ugly ass costume? See, I'm not talking about the disingenuous motherfuckers. I'm talking about like, or this doesn't apply to the genuine people. It applies to the disingenuous ones. The ones who do the kind of shit I just pointed out. Like, I don't want to deal with them. I'm not trying to attack the ones that don't fall into that category. I'm clearly attacking the ones who do fall into that category because their shitty behavior, their lack of knowledge, their lack of articulation, you know, or it's not articulation. I'm using the word wrong. Their lack of ability to articulate their thoughts and the factual information surrounding these characters. It just makes us look dumb, you know? The ones who start a conversation or a potential conversation with a good topic and then fly off the handle because they don't understand how to stick to the point, or they really had nothing to say past, you know, do you ever feel like you're too old to collect toys? Are you ever embarrassed that you collect toys? Because they're embarrassed, and that's all there is to it. But instead of coming out and just saying that, which would be a more interesting conversation, because then in the comments we could go back and forth. We can make several videos back and forth talking about these things. You're going to sit there and meander and say nothing, and then you're going to get subscribers based on the thesis but not the discussion. What the fuck? Like, I can't be the only one of us that's getting older and I look at this stuff and I'm like, why the fuck am I even here? What am I doing? Why am I even uploading videos? Nobody's listening. You're listening to like these incoherent conversations that are being started on all these channels that keep popping up out of the blue. And you can tell like the people have money because you look at their collection space and you're like, God damn, that's a giant room. And you fill the whole thing. Not to knock them, you do what you do. But like, they have more money and less ability to talk about what they do. Whatever happened to the regular guys who can speak on what they do and kind of want to discuss it with like-minded people? I'm not saying people that are going to suck your dick about everything that you do. I'm talking about people that can say, yeah, I've been there. I've been through the same thing. I felt the same way. I cannot possibly be, and maybe I am. It wouldn't be the first time, but this doesn't seem like something that's specific to me, because I know in other conversations I've had with collectors over the years, I've heard this sentiment. But like in recent years, it feels like people are less genuine when it comes to this stuff. And you just don't really get, I don't really get a feel from these conversations or from these videos that I'm watching. I don't get a feel for folks that are really trying to ask questions that, you know, we could explore more. It feels like the topic is clickbait so that they could just sit in front of the camera and talk about nothing and then tell you to like, share, and subscribe. And because for whatever reason, maybe you collect the same thing he collects, or maybe one day you want to have a cave as big as that person's cave, you subscribe. Remember Denobi 2 or whatever? There was drama with him a couple years ago. I remember people followed him, and when I would listen to him and I would watch how he does what he does, I'm like homeboy was buying those 12-inch figures that have dicks, and they have removable dicks that you can put different size dick. Why do I need Captain America to have a dick under his fucking suit? What's going on? And dude had a decent amount of subscribers. Like, what the fuck? That's what you. This is where I start feeling like, man, I'm too old for this shit. Like, I'm gonna collect figures and I'm gonna make figures, but I'm too old to engage with some of this nonsense. You know, if you've noticed, there's in my not subscribers, but channels I've subscribed to, I've cut back a lot. I mean, there's been hundreds of people that like I used to love and I used to come on to YouTube to listen to because they always had insightful things to say, and they stopped and they disappeared. Some of them, their editing was god tier. My homeboy Flo, shout out to you in Brazil. Flo is dope. Berserk Flo is what is his handle online. he was one of the few people who reviewed SIC figures from Kamen Rider and stuff. And his videos were so dope. Motherfucker was so pissed because YouTube just kind of buried him underneath all kinds of stuff, and so he couldn't get traction. And he would do his videos in Portuguese and English. Most of you barely speak English and it's your first language. This guy's speaking in 2 different languages, and he's editing the shit. His shots were beautiful. His cinematography was beautiful. His editing was beautiful. Nothing. It makes you want to quit. And that's why I'm asking this question. You know what I mean? Because you know how many times I felt like quitting? In the last couple years, it's been about 3 or 4 times. And I just settled on uploading when I feel like it. Uploading when something hits me and makes me want to upload. One of my favorite YouTubers over the years was Vangelis. He primarily does Transformers stuff, but every now and then he'll do like figure arts and Kamen Rider shit and like, you know, other goofy stuff. Recent years, he kind of just does what he feels like. I think he's hit the point where he doesn't really need to be consistent because dude's been around so long. He was a character in one of the Saints Row games years ago. One of the Hitman missions or assassination missions. I was starting to look at how he does stuff. I mean, I don't think I have anywhere near his viewer count, but I was looking at how he was doing things and I was like, I need to do stuff the way he does stuff, you know? I need to, when I do a review, I need to, or if I'm going to do a review, I need to just do it when I feel like it. I need to do it when I'm moved to do a review, because otherwise, what's the point? You know what I mean? I don't want to just do a video just to do it. And it's weird. Vangelis has been online for a long time. He's up there with some of the great like YouTubers. He's got a little over 1,000 videos. And he only has like, it's under 50,000 subs. What the fuck? You'd think somebody as prolific, someone who his editing is beautiful, his shots are beautiful, everything about what he does, the production design, everything is beautiful. His commentary is hilarious. I mean, it's simple, don't get me wrong. It's him in a very dark screen, a dark background with a cool Gundam chain-based background and stuff. But you would think that people that put in that kind of work, that get to his level, when it comes to what he actually does and how he, you know, the awareness that he's brought to the corner of the hobby that he occupies, you would think that he would have a higher subscriber count. I mean, like when you look at Vangelis' channel, he can educate about Transformers history, as well as show you the Transformer in a really cool way with sound effects and all that stuff and a little bit of animation and puppetry. And then he'll show you how to transform the figure, and then he'll tell you about the history of sometimes the company that made the figures and all that stuff. But his production value and everything is really well done. He's got 44K. Shartimus Prime, not very good, very whiny, very complainy, very like puts on a character for you to listen to, which is kind of annoying. And this man has over 658,000 subscribers, and they've been at this for about the same amount of time. Why? You know what I mean? Why? How is it that certain people are in the situation they are? You know, he joined in 2008. He joined about the same time I did. And somehow Shartimus Prime has like 100 times more than I have. And you know, shit, close to that same amount more than Vangelis, who has like triple the amount of videos I have, or quadruple the amount of subscribers I have. Yet, when you objectively just look at what's being presented, one of them gives you a lot of information and gives you a whole experience, whereas the other one just feels kind of, it's generic. I remember back in the day when Shartimus Prime and Boxing Type X and Century Productions were like some of the guys that everybody was watching. And I remember people not liking Shartimus Prime even back then. And I'm not throwing shade at the guy. I'm just saying he doesn't really do anything than glaze up Hasbro. Not to say that he's never said that Hasbro has made something bad, but he glazes them. And a bunch of his fans glaze Hasbro. And then, meanwhile, you have characters like Vangelis who don't do that, which, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's the sign. He's not kissing somebody's ass in order to get views. He's 100% being pretty objective, but he does admit when he has a bias. You know what I mean? Um, I'm asking about this stuff because it's kind of annoying that this is where we're at. You know what I mean? Like so many of us, Jesus Christ. So many of us are we're doing this work. We're putting in this work. We're doing what we do. Like Anthony's Customs. He's put in the work, but a lot of people complain, myself included. That's my criticism of him, is that he would talk about customs really hard, and he's really what's the word? He's really critical about other people's work, and then his work isn't that much better. Um, and then he has a lot of people who have complained about the quality of his videos and the perspective of his videos and all the nitpicking that he does, because a lot of things he says is just not, it's not a rule, but he acts like it is. You know, people have criticized his toy line, the rival collectible prototypes that he's working on. Toys take a long time to make because there's a need for a lot of different cooks in the oven, or a lot of different cooks cooking what's going to go into the oven. That sounded really bad. And you have to wait. You know, you do something, even when you do most of it yourself, you have to wait for the next part to be done. You got to wait for the funds to do other things. Unless you're independently wealthy, then you don't wait for shit. You still got to wait for production, though. Production takes time. You got to wait for all those people involved to do your the actual running the mold machines, the injection machines, tampography, painting. All of that shit takes time, and you got to wait. It takes years, you know. But people were talking shit about him, just like they did to Invincible Toys. And I mean, what do you want? He can't make the stuff just appear. And then there's a level of quality that QC comes in, and they know what they're supposed to be doing. And then they will be like, hey, this doesn't meet the standard. We got to go back and fix a bunch of other stuff. And now you've added a couple more years or months to your deadline, and the shit just takes forever. But on top of that, his constantly negative, like nitpicking, there's some knowledge there, but he nitpicks way more than he needs to. Yet he has 216,000 subscribers. I remember there was a point in time where I never heard anything from him except that he is negative, super negative, all the time negative. And I'm just like, really? You know what I mean? Like, really? That's it? So then I watched his videos, and there were some things he said that were cool. He feels the same way I do about the Soda Street Fighter line. He went in harder than I did. I only wanted the first player colors of each of the characters, and that's it. He got every variant of just about every character. I don't need to do that because I'm only going to ever mess with the one that I like. So why do that? Even when I was playing the game hardcore, I always used the same color for whoever I played with, and most times it was the default. So I was never that guy. But he agrees with me because objectively they did so many things correctly. And even with that sentiment and that piece of knowledge, he still is negative about so many other things that somewhat follow the same design principles as the Soda Street Fighter line, yet his subscriber count doesn't reflect the overly negative assessment of his persona and his channel. What is it? What is it that you guys seem to want? You know, I look at Transformers stuff and I listen to nitpick after nitpick after nitpick. And then there's a couple guys who take really good pictures and they're not as nitpicky. They always tend to have lower view counts than the guys who get everything and just bitch and moan about all the things. People said I was overly negative, but like I actually am pointing you in the direction of like new things that you don't typically see. Like I'm one of the few, there's only a few of us who have ever reviewed SIC stuff on YouTube or just on the internet. If you do a search right now for SIC fies, I come up in that search and there's only a few others. And most of them are in Manila. I'll just say the Philippines. I don't need to get super specific, but most of them are in the Philippines. And there's a couple Japanese guys, and that's it. I was never one of those who jumped on this so that I could just do what everyone else is doing. I want to show you other things. I come on here and I ask for help when it comes to like, how do you, I remember asking about fies and people just, they were like, meh. One guy gave me information. One guy. Shout out to Akhtar. Akhtar gave me a bunch of information and it was pretty dope. And I was able to actually find and start my Kamen Rider collection properly. Um, there was I look at like Power Rangers guys too. Same deal. They sit there and they nitpick or they just glaze the franchise for everything they do and they never are objective. Objectively, you're talking about B movie quality TV. And they talk about it like the shit's a full length feature film with a budget behind it. And then when you do get the budget, like the 2017, I think it was, the movie that came out with Dacre Montgomery and Naomi Scott and all of them. It's kind of crazy how almost the whole cast, with the exception of maybe Becky G, the whole cast went on to do big things, bigger things, I should say. Some of them were already doing big things like Bryan Cranston. But anyway, long story short, that movie, the Power Ranger community, quote unquote, the fan base, bitches and complains and they critique the shit out of it like it was poorly done. And I'm like, the only thing that was lacking from that movie was choreography. There was no martial arts choreography in that movie, and you needed it. You had moments where you could see that the director could easily handle shooting fight scenes from a cool angle. You had barely anything going on when they put on their suits. They did everything in their Zords and stuff, and it's like you in their training in the cave. It was like, who the fuck came up with this? They should have been able to do superhero stuff if you're not going to do martial arts. But like that's not what you hear from the majority of the people complaining. They just complain about which music was used. Tommy wasn't in it. Tommy wasn't in it. Tommy wasn't in it. Tommy wasn't in it. You know, they didn't fuck. And it's like, dude, what are you talking about? Like what? Yet a lot of those creators, they got crazy. There's this one creepy dude, something the waffle. He's old, but he's trying to look young, and his nails are painted, and his hair's all like super long and not super long, but long and messy, and he's got like a neck beard, but he's not a neck beard in a traditional sense. It's like he just needs to take care of himself, I guess. And somehow he's got a lot of attention on him and a lot of, subscribers and such. And I'm just like, what is it that you guys seem to look for that makes these guys get the attention versus the guys who actually, like, you could tell within a few minutes of listening to them that they know what they're talking about? I don't really use the subscriber count as a tell for their quality, but for their success, I have to use it because that's what YouTube uses as their success. They have more subscribers, they have higher, watch through rates from what I've read. And so those guys are the ones that get the attention. Those are the guys who get the higher payouts per month because, more ads, more watched ads equals more revenue. I'm not going to bribe people, and I'm not changing my shtick when it comes to YouTube. I'm purely on here to do this for fun because I like to review cool stuff so that I can allow people who may not know or who have watched mediocre reviews on these things, I can actually go into detail and show you how things really work. And, that's how my mind works. So I'm not doing it to spite anybody. It's literally so that you know the quality of the thing you're about to buy through and through. That's all. Um, but I'm not going to change based on the answers to these questions. I'm just strictly asking to understand what it is when what it is that draws you to who you're drawn to. You know, because then here's the other part. On top of all the things I just said, lately it's been coming out that a lot of YouTubers are creeps. You know, a lot of YouTubers are doing fucked up shit. And then everyone's like, I would have never thought. So it's like you're not really paying attention. You know what I mean? You see interactions with them on Twitter and shit. I don't do all that shit. I'm not going to be on Twitter 24/7 talking about stuff that, I would know. Some of it I don't give a shit about. But the things I would comment on, I know in detail, I understand in detail, and many of you wouldn't want to actually have that conversation. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to sit there and be judging all these folks on you know TikTok or something like that just because um, that's the thing to do that everyone does. Like, I'm not doing it. You know what I mean? I make videos about the figures I collect. I talk about it on my Discord. I post pictures of some of this cool stuff on Instagram. I'm making figures and I post the process and some of the designs and stuff on Instagram and my Discord. And I like to talk about the figures, the history of figures, the love of the hobby, and things that I find interesting about some of this stuff and how the toys relate to the characters that are displayed in whatever medium they come from. A lot of you don't really have that discussion. And I remember watching a video from Young Rippa from Rippaverse, Eric July. I'm not a huge fan of his, but I have to agree with him on a couple things. There's no such thing in the current day as fans of these things. People aren't getting excited for the things that they call themselves fans of. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's criticizing everything, but people aren't enjoying everything. And it used to be that way. You'll see people criticize a design before they tell you how much they love the design. And when they do tell you they love a design, oftentimes it's a generic ass design. It's a character clad in black. And it's like, oh, for the fucking billionth time, a character clad in all black is your favorite? Like, you have no imagination. And then we can't discuss why you should expand your horizons because they say all art is subjective. It's not. Your reaction to it is. But, that's a different story. And that's one of those things that even the art YouTubers on YouTube, not many of them actually give people the real when it comes to how that works. They don't tell you that there's a distinction because if it can be taught, then there's a right way and a wrong way objectively, which means you can't be subjective with that thing. Mickey Mouse is objectively drawn like this. Whether you like him or not is a subjective opinion, but he is a corporate mascot, which means there's a right way and a wrong way to draw him as put forth by the Walt Disney Corporation. That argument doesn't stand, And then when people say like a character looks like this, it doesn't look like this. You have bad artists who want to argue, or bad faith artists who want to argue that point so they can get their point across. And you have a whole bunch of ignorant people. And I don't mean ignorant like racist or something like that. I mean ignorant as in they don't know. They have no idea that they side with the personality that they like because it's easier for them to digest the concept of we can all have our own, feelings on a thing, and we can be right this way. Unfortunately, you can't. You can feel like that. You can feel whatever the fuck you want to feel, and it won't change reality. And that's a big problem in today's world. And it seems to be a big problem in a lot of the fandoms, It's disrespectful the way some of these fandoms treat the things that they love, My Hero Academia fandom is like one of the worst and best examples of what I'm talking about. They want to rewrite whole plot points. Not to say that the series itself was consistently great. It never fucking made good on what it promised from the first fucking issue. So, you failed in that respect. It still went on to do great things, and there were great moments, don't get me wrong, but the fan base, so much of what actually happens, they just act like it didn't happen. So many straight characters are just gay because they want them to be. You know what I mean? They want to ship who they want to ship, and it's like, yo, that's not even the point of the series. You're missing the points of the series. Why don't you rewrite the series so that it ends where we see how Deku became the greatest superhero of all time, or the greatest hero in the world, like he said he did in the first fucking episode. I mean, if I was watching the show when it came out, I watched for a very long time, and then when 5 to 6 years, or maybe it was 7 years passed, and we were still in the first 2 years of school, I gave up. I was like, you motherfuckers don't know how to move a story along. You know how to line your pockets, but you don't know how to move a story along. But my point is, the fan base is concerned about who's fucking who, and not concerned with how the story does what it set out to do. And this is like emblematic of the way that fans tend to consume the media that they consume. And I'm wondering, is that the same thing going on YouTube? Because that's what it looks like. You guys are in it to belong, but you're not in it for the actual meat and potatoes of the what's being discussed, and that's the figures. Videos of British dudes' faces all day long and not the toy, but you're reviewing a toy. I don't give a shit what you look like. I turned into your video because of the thing that you're reviewing, and it's like I don't know, 70-30 screen time for the toy versus your ugly ass face. Like, who gives a shit? You're not the thing that's on display. Your voice and your perspective is, but the figure is the star of the show. It's like when you go on Twitch and you see those quote unquote gaming babes, and unlike the gamer guys who the screen is filled with the game and the little picture in picture is filled with his face, it's flipped. You've got a tiny little screen of the gameplay, and you've got a whole screen directed at their fucking cleavage, or whatever the fuck they choose to do at the time. And it's kind of unfair that, like, that's the way that it goes, and they get more attention, obviously, because we know why, than the folks who put in the time to edit and learn the game and capture what they've done and teach you and show you. I mean, in some cases, they're just bragging about how good they are or how much they play a game. But in many cases, they're trying to teach you how to play the game, or they're showing you things you can do in the game. And for whatever reason, that's not the focus. You know what I mean? And I'm tired, man. Like, I can't tune in to my favorite, like, to look for my favorite stuff and get a good example of whatever that is. Like Monster Force. I'm all in on Monster Force, but the reviews and the videos about Monster Force are bad. They're so bad. So much opinion, so much like glazing, but not like, you're not supporting what you're saying with what you show us. So much of a lack of knowledge, even if you're purely coming to it from the figure. You're not talking about the story, just the figure. Still, and I've been looking. The pictures don't look good. The poses don't look good. You don't know how to put, people complaining that, like, the Kilowog, they can't put the head on, even when they soften it. You're weak. Just say you're not strong, or you don't know how to do it properly. It took me, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes, maybe a little bit more. Let's say 8 minutes. It took me like 5 to heat it up, and then 5 to just try to push it on, and then pop it off a couple times to work the joint out, and boom, I can do it without the heat now. You heat up the figure so it's soft, or the part that the socket is on. You pop the thing back on, you pull it off, you run it under cold water, and you pop it back on. It's not rocket science, and there's people saying that even after they did that, they still couldn't do it. You shouldn't be making videos about action figures, homie. You should be making videos about you buying and liking a figure. Don't tell us about your process of trying to put the thing together, because it's embarrassing. But a lot of these cats got subscribers up the wazoo. And then I look at all these other guys I know that do a great job. They're straightforward. They don't talk too much. And they're not getting the same treatment. It's like mediocrity is the order of the day, and then people who put in time and effort and who actually are knowledgeable, they're not wanted. It's like the fake fans or the fake nerds or the, I don't even know if I'd call them fake, but the new fly by night nerds, the Johnny come lately nerds, have become the majority. And so the ones that we've always done this, we don't really know anything else. We've become the minority again. And the attention, I mean, it's not even attention because I'm not some fucking OnlyFans chick or something, some Instagram chick. I don't need attention. I'm an introvert. I only want to have the conversation when I'm online. You know what I mean? Or if I knew you in real life and we came over, we could have conversations about this shit and it'd be fun. We can geek out. But like, it seems like only, how do I put this? The original nerds, the ones that were always into this stuff, don't get to discuss this stuff with other original nerds due to the sheer amount of Johnny come latelys that have taken up the space. And it forced so many people to kind of back off because I'm pretty sure they feel similarly to me, where they're annoyed with this shit and they just back off. They're just like, fuck it, I'll let you guys do your thing and I'll enjoy my thing, my stuff in silence. You know, I'll enjoy it privately without everyone else. I don't know. I remember when there was a point in time in the early 2000s where we all would enjoy this stuff together. We would all like jump on Facebook and share how we fix things and, you know, issues that we found with certain figures and how we got past the issue. What did you do to get past the issue? Was it a QC issue and you call Hasbro or whoever, or was it a design issue and you figured out a way to fix the design, you know, or circumvent the issue itself? Like, I remember those days, and it was so much fun because I would learn things when I went online. Now I'm not learning shit. All I learn is how focused on the figures people are. It seems like people are more focused on the act of buying the stuff and being a part of the group that has bought this thing than they are actually interacting with the thing. And that always bugs me. You know? It always bugs me. Like hearing people say, oh, I bought this figure, but I would have never thought to pose him. And the figure is clad in articulation. A fucking Revel Tech Yamaguchi figure that the reason why you buy it is because it's so well articulated. You can get him into insane poses. And you're telling me you never thought to take him out the box and pose him. And you say that publicly and other people chime in like, yeah, me too. What the actual fuck? What is going on? And the people who say that make a video and get a bunch of buy-in from other people. The video's done on an old ass, you know, phone camera or something. So it's not the clearest. Camera's doing all kinds of stuff. And they're talking about how they feel. And they're getting buy-in. And it's like, they're action figures. How would you not think to put the toy in action? I don't know, man. Maybe I'm rambling, but I don't know. Tell me what you guys think. Some of you, what you think in the comments, because as I get older, I have less time for this shit. I have less interest in that kind of shit. I want to talk to people. Like whenever I sit down and talk with my homeboy Luke, or whenever me and Agent O or ODC, that's me, start chatting about action figures, we got all kinds of good things to say about the stuff we're collecting, because we don't just collect, well, all of us don't. I mean, ODC has his things, but I usually hip him to something new, and then he'll get into it, and he'll see that it's quality, like the Furay Planet stuff. I've been telling him for a long time that China is making some shit that makes the American market look pretty bleak. And he jumped into the Furay Planet stuff, or Fury Planet, or Maestro Union. You know, it's all the same. Or it's all related, I should say. And he's blown away from the stuff. When we talk about what we like, what we would change, what it reminds us of, because honestly, a lot of what the Chinese market is doing now, material-wise, feels like things that we used to get in the early days of well, I shouldn't say even the early days, but like in the middle of McFarlane's like heyday back in the 90s. And when Stan Winston and them were making figures too, and some of the same sculptors that did stuff for McFarlane were sculpting his stuff, the materials feel very similar. And they feel improved, but they feel similar to that. Monster Force has that quality to it. We talk about these things. A lot of you weren't collecting back then. Or if you were, you forgot because you jump on things that's new and you forget about the old. Like, I don't work like that, you know? I want to educate and I want to reminisce. That's where my nostalgia comes from. When I have a toy that brings me back to a time when creativity was at the forefront, I was all about it. That's when I want to keep talking about that. I want to explore that more. When a figure is done so well, it reminds me of one of the best figures I've ever had. I want to talk about that. I want to geek out about that. You know, when we're making a setup to take pictures and it's based on something because the toy line is not based on a pre-existing IP. I want to talk about that. The movies that we watch, like right now, I've been playing around with Monster Force, like hardcore, and I've been posing them up and I'm doing things I saw in Dog Soldiers and other werewolf having movies and stuff and Underworld and shit. And we talk about that stuff, you know? Me and Anthony were talking about that stuff for hours, about having a crush on Kate Beckinsale, especially in that movie. And like the things we liked about the series, the things we hated about the series. Like, you know, that's the way that my brain works. It's just rare that I find others online that have that same feeling or even remember the shit that I'm talking about. And it bugs me because there's so many people out there and so many choose to bandwagon on lame shit and they pretend like it's good. Meanwhile, actually connecting with the people that you're talking to, you know, past the fact that we all buy the same shit, really connecting with folks, that's where it's at. And that's not really happening very much. I don't know. Get at me. Let me know if you guys feel what I'm saying. This hour and nearly 30-minute video. And yeah, that's it for me. You guys have been great. Peace outside.